Hello and welcome to This Contains Garlic. You are here with your hosts Georgia Garlic
Mark Garlic.
and we are back. And today we are talking about, which was actually dictated by a poll that we did on our social media, and it won, is does stress affect weight loss? So yeah, let's get into
Here we are talking about it and about to unpack it.
unpack it. Really, unpack
Yeah.
or anyway.
I feel like it's something that generally and definitely needs to be discussed. I'm not 100% sure on what the current trend in the market is, but for the longest time, um, words like cortisol and stress hormones and all these kind of things were thrown about as a either an indicator of bad self-care habits or a limiting factor to weight loss. We've heard numerous times that increased cortisol levels have stopped or impeded people from losing weight. So I feel like it's a relevant topic that we should discuss.
I think first things first, you need to understand what cortisol actually does, what it does in the body. Because I think before you delve into anything, you actually need to understand that hormonal structure of how the human body actually processes things. So, what is cortisol, Mark?
Cortisol is a steroid hormone that is produced in your adrenal glands at the top of your kidneys. Um, it could be used for anti-inflammatory. It could be used
Regulating your metabolism.
regulating metabolism and the mitochondria within your cells, and a vast variety of other benefits within the human body.
But obviously, there are going to be drawbacks, pros and cons on either side. So, if your cortisol is too high or if your cortisol is too low. Now, majority of the time, you're going to come across more people that have slightly higher cortisol than you are lower cortisol. Now, when we talk about weight loss, there are things that your body needs to follow in order to lose weight, and that is obviously intaking or reducing your energy intake, so how much food you consume on a day-to-day basis, but also potentially increasing your energy output, so moving more. Now, stress and weight loss is now I'm going to ask Mark this. Do you think stress will impact weight loss?
I think obviously stress impacts people in different ways, and some people, when they are super stressed, they gain weight, and some people, when they're stressed, lose weight. I think the reality is does stress impact weight loss in a physiological sense? No,
Or
because at the end of the day, that comes down to an overall difference between your calorie intake and your calorie expenditure. But what stress does impact is your decision making and other aspects that are going to then influence your calories in versus calories out. So I think there needs to be a diverging path. Like, can you still lose weight and be very stressed? Yes.
yes.
Can you do it in a proper and healthy manner? Yes. Is it going to be more difficult because it's going to have an implication on how you look at your internal narrative, how you make food choices, your overall consistency and adherence, and all those other major factors that are the driving process towards weight loss?
I think, we always say that when it comes to wanting to lose weight, that your mindset has to be correct before you go and embark on it. Because you've got to understand that when you want to lose weight, something needs to change. It's going to be things that potentially put you at a little bit of stress or unease at the start of it. So is stress, should we experience no stress in our life? No, I don't agree with that. I think that a lot of actions are made based on the fact that we feel a certain way, and stress can be can be that. Now, there's large varying factors of what stress is, and it's personal to each and every individual's context. But there's people that live with a very high amount of stress. It could be a job that requires them, that has minimal sleep, maximum hours, constant demand, or could be very physical or very unsafe as a job.
Just downright dangerous.
Yeah, dangerous, which puts your body into that stressful environment. And then you've got people where they might get stressed as they don't know what to eat that day, or they don't know what they're doing, and actually they're seeking more structure than they are actually stressed. And when you've got that structure in place, the likelihood is that stress is going to obviously be dissolved a day in, day out, because you're actioning something. Now, when you want to lose weight, do we advise? Now, it is possible, like Mark said, like you could be working in a really highly stressful job or have a very highly stressful lifestyle and still successfully lose weight. If anything, that process needs to be the least stressful out of all of your self-care, your day-to-day living. But is it the right time for you to be embarking in a massive journey? Now, if you are morbidly obese and you need to make action on your health, we would say, yes, you should potentially be actioning things even if you are highly stressed, because your stress levels are going to reduce when your nutrition is better, your exercise output is greater, you've got more fresh air, your sleep is catered for, because this relieves a lot of mental stress. But when you're week in, week out, and maybe your weight doesn't move and it's not going in the right direction, it could be that that mental stress on a day-to-day basis is a sort of it's overcompensating on certain things, which means that you end up in a situation where you're not really sure why you're not losing weight, you're highly stressed, and then you're kind of blaming it on the fact that you are stressed as to why it's not working. It's probably because when you are in those stressful environments, like we know, if you've had a long day at work, or the first thing you might reach for is, I need a snack, or I'm hungry, or
I think having looked over and been in the industry for a while, the reality is when stressful environments arise, whether it's through work or your personal life, adherence to your overall targets, whether it's nutrition or training or mental health, self-care, those tend to slip. And that's then the correlation between, looking and searching for that excuse to maybe why you're not losing weight or progressing in your self-care habits. And the reality is it just comes down to you're stressed out, and it's really difficult to make the right decisions when A, you're stressed, B, you're tired. It's so difficult to take the right path when all you want to do is just
And actually, as a side note,
do what's easy.
You can't just find out if you've got too much cortisol in your body from just assuming that you've got too much cortisol in your body. The same with I've got too low cortisol in my body. You don't fucking know anything unless you go and get your bloods done. Point one, okay? And that is a serious blood test. We're not talking, going in, waltzing in, and just like going and getting your vitamin B check. Like cortisol, it's like any hormonal profile. You need to be getting your bloods done from a specialist, an endocrinologist, and actually look at those numbers for you in order for you to even make an assumption as to whether your cortisol is too high.
You're going onto a blog and doing
reading a magazine.
ABC, do you know what I mean? Like, no.
People give you examples of high cortisol, you can't necessarily assume that it's entirely, that is the factor behind it. And we do see this a lot. And another podcast, which we are going to be doing in the next coming weeks, is like, do you have a hormonal imbalance? Because that is a topic which a lot of people link hormonal imbalances to the reasons why they cannot lose weight. Now, stress, as we've said time and time again, it is very much down to the case study of the individual. We could take a number of different pathways here. Say, for example, let's think of our clients. Maybe you're a lawyer. You've got a number of cases on, very in-depth ones. You've got to read till late at night. You've got people emailing you at all times. You've got to be in the office. You've got to be there. You've got to be here. You've got to be on phone calls. And as well as trying to maybe look after a child, keep your husband or your partner happy. You know what I mean? I'm talking,
cook, clean,
all of these
go
things.
To work, life.
Then obviously you're putting yourself at quite a lot of mental stress on a day-to-day basis, because that's juggling not only a mindset but also a health. And I think, there are times, and we've said this time and time again, that some jobs, probably a reason why the whole of the UK is striking right now. Some jobs, not to say that all of those jobs are stressful, but some jobs can put you at a huge amount of stress on a day-to-day basis where you just can't manage your self-care on the other side, and that is going to directly impact whether or not you can lose weight or not. Now, if we went on to something like sleep, if you're very stressed, it could link you having insomnia or traits of insomnia where you can't get to sleep, you're overthinking, you're tossing and turning, and this happens on a continual routine basis.
Well, cortisol does impact your sleep-wake cycle directly. So managing that is obviously, if you're not sleeping well and not resting correctly, you're always going to have low energy.
And also, actually, technically, what you would call a hormonal imbalance, which is if you're not sleeping well, the likelihood of you being hungrier is much, much higher. That's because there's a difference in your hunger hormones. When you don't sleep correctly, you're lacking.
Yeah,
which
that
means
circadian rhythm is struggling to reset itself on a consistent basis.
So when you're like, oh God, why am I craving like a donut at like 10 a.m.
And then it just compounds over time. The more stressed you get, the worse you feel, the harder you struggle to adhere to your self-care habits, the worse you feel, the more you beat yourself up about it, the worse you feel. And it's a consistent circle of habits that slowly, erode your self-care.
But I do think that it's one of these things that actually, if we talk about the downfalls to stress, obviously there are multiple issues with stress. There's also this thing where there's a perspective you could look at it as to whether or not we take on other people's stress more than we need to at the moment. Now, we have delved into this and spoken about this on pretty much probably every podcast it comes up. But we are living in a world now where if you don't share your life or all your stresses or your, things that are going wrong, then what are you as a human? And so what's happened is those that have large influences who are sharing their stresses, whether or not you resonate with it or not, it's a problem because you're now taking on and shouldering the stress of others around you subconsciously. Now, we are all guilty of this, whether or not you read something which kind of stresses you out and you're like, oh God, the news is Mark was saying the other day, why is there no positive news? And it's always been known that there's no news is good news. But why can't there be? Why can't there be somewhere where actually we're looking at all the best things in the world rather than the fucking worst? And, we have watched the news recently and we try not to do this. And there's this constant thing of they will go into, I'll give you an example. They were talking about the weather the other day and the fact of the extremes where the climate changing, and that Afghanistan this year has dealt with the coldest year so far to date, okay? And so we're like, okay, cool. Afghanistan's dealt with the coldest winter. And then they go and get a journalist that goes into literally the mountains of Afghanistan and sits there with a family of 9, 10 people in obviously a hut, which is not as well developed as what most people in a first world would be, and is sort of telling you just how miserable it really is for those people sat in that hut in the cold. And you're thinking, but why have you gone all that way to find something where actually they're probably used to that norm? Do you know what I mean? You're asking and prodding these questions for negativity, and yet we're all here watching it, and we're all here going, of course, people in a hut maybe that don't have heating, just like half the UK right now because it's fucking freezing and nobody can afford to turn their electricity on. We're getting stressed for other people's, I guess, problems. Now, if you are rational as a human, you can deal with that quite well. But what's happened in our brains over time is that we shoulder that responsibility. So anything that's in the media or on social media or whatever you see, you suddenly can feel triggered by, or you run in your day-to-day life. I'm sure
you just create an echo chamber of negativity because all the algorithm does is thrive on, sadness, depression, anger. And if you consume it on a day-to-day basis, it will have an impact on your overall mental health.
And I've seen
And
this a lot.
that is blatantly obvious across all psychological examinations on people from a wide demographic of young people to old people, that it's just doom and gloom basically, and that is what pays the bills.
Yeah, and we obviously have a business that runs on social media, for example, so we know the back end of this stuff very, very well. And like, if you post controversial shit, you're going to get maximum engagement. And this is so fucked because not only are we doing it for a performative reason to like spur on something, the same as like somebody putting out something that's quite clickbaity, you're almost annoyed before you've even read it. It's sat with you. And I'll give you a prime example of this actually, which I think for women you will probably understand more than men, but I think there's still the understanding the same with men's mental health. But women over the years, now I say this, I don't have children, but I've worked with many, many women that do, and many, many women that have dealt with fertility issues or miscarriages or problems throughout pregnancy, all of these things. Now, what's happened with social media is that we've formed this sort of mum cycle where somebody gets pregnant, which is great, well done. Some people can't get pregnant. They share their excitement. They'll then share their challenges of pregnancy. They might then have an issue at birth, or maybe the baby's, maybe early or late, or, they'll share their stresses on that. Then the baby's born, and then it's the misery of mumhood. So you'll see, all I see is, oh God, breastfeeding so bloody painful. All of this cycle of, oh, it's so hard, I'm so tired, I'm this, I'm struggling from PTSD, we had a traumatic birth. Or it could be they didn't get pregnant and we're now talking about the mass about miscarriage. Now, these things are good to share. I appreciate there is things where people are going to resonate with this addition, and they're going to feel slightly better if somebody else is experiencing it as well as they are. But here's where the problem lies, is that people who don't have children or maybe are trying for a child, there's additional stress in both parties, because somebody that's trying for a child and can't have one is now seeing everybody that's getting pregnant, and it's like, oh my God, like, why am I getting pregnant? An additional stress to your mental health. And second of all, like, if you have had a child or there's been issues with it, those that don't have children that maybe want to have children or are interested in about developing that, and now reading about how much miscarriages are going to happen, how you might be infertile, are your hormones okay? What if we give birth to, and I get PTSD, and, all of these things, you don't see it really, you don't really think into it until
So what you're
life
trying to say
decisions
is
happen and that additional stress is put on for you
what
for
you're
no
trying to say is
reason.
ignorance is bliss, essentially. So, like back in the
Yes.
day, previous generations, if with no social media and the announcement culture that drives, society now, that you would you would be none the wiser, basically. So that means your
Yeah.
overall kind of stress levels towards certain things that could possibly go wrong, but potentially are going to be completely fine,
Yes.
increases, and like
And could actually
almost makes you
limit your
paranoid.
chances of a success or something positive happening, because, there is this whole thing which I think most people are not aware of as placebo effect, and talking yourself into things when actually it's not actually happening. And you can literally talk yourself into having that you're ill or that
Yeah.
something wrong with you. And actually, there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. You've just talked yourself into it. And there's been numerous clinical trials, specifically with diseases and those that are ill, where they give people a trial of drug, and some people on the trial will get given the drug, which is meant to obviously help them and get them better, and the other people get given literally water or something like sugar water or a saline liquid. And it's the placebo effect as to whether or not just giving something to somebody in order to make a change like helps, in the sense of like whether or not they're going to get better. And the trials are like remarkable as to those people that were not even given the drug suddenly I'll get better. And it's the whole effect, placebo effect, which I feel like we just are not really aware of as a society. Like there is so much that is compounding our day-to-day stress. And I think it's really important that we bring up these factors where you can actually look at your lifestyle and go, do you know what, that's fucking true. Because it's happened in my life. Like we've had this conversation in depth recently, actually, with one of Mark's friends, and we're kind of annoyed we didn't do a podcast about it at the time. We were like, fuck, we should have microphones right now. But it was that whole thing of like, you know, we're 5 years married, you know, we run a business together. In the eyes of people, why are we not having children, you know? And like, obviously there's personal reasons behind everything, but there is that thing in my mind where I'm like, maybe I've read far too much into this. Like, I understand the body probably far greater than most people do. But why is it that I'm hesitant? It's because I've also seen a shit ton of negativity about it.
Yeah, well,
and
that's true.
and you know, is that healthy for me to be consuming? No. Am I going to advocate? You know, take myself away from that? Yes.
That is actually so true because, you know, apart from the mandatory candid photos, you know, a lot of it is just people moaning about how horrible it is,
or managing the life. And you know, we had this conversation: is do you ever really grow up unless you have children? And you know, the same thing comes back to the whole thing of like, I get it, it's the most testing time you'll ever, you know.
And then
I mean, I don't know yet, but I
get
can
the
see
mandatory. Oh, well, why do you? Well, it's so difficult to just explain the unconditional love. It's like every single person has said. It's like the most generic answer I've ever heard. I get it.
But I on the other side,
I also just want to highlight that, you know, the reality is the world is not void of stress, and to a certain degree, you need to undergo stressful situations and come out on top for you to gain a deeper feeling of fulfillment. So if you don't have any fulfillment in your life and you're not really achieving things, it's going to be a very dark and dreary place. There has to be that level of overcoming something, working hard and overcoming a hurdle to achieve an end result or a goal that provides true fulfillment and happiness in your life. So there does need to be levels of stress, and you know, we are also very guilty of having a society that's toxically positive all the time and everything's amazing, and God forbid I might struggle. Do you know what I mean?
But then I think that's kind of slightly changed over the years. Now it's like, oh God, actually being toxically positive doesn't actually help. Do you know what? Now I'm going to be miserable. And I'm effectively going to tell everybody of my struggles, which is fine. Again, I don't think we need. Now, this is the difference of stress. Going back to the point of if stress affect your, you know, weight loss, you know, your environment is everything when it comes to weight loss. Literally will dictate whether or not you succeed. It's your environment. So if your environment is fueled from additional stress, which is completely out of your control, it is going to affect you, but not in a physical side, in a mental side. And this is what I say, the brain controls everything. Forget the fact whether or not you eat less, move more, blah, blah, and you do all of that. Like, if you can't mentally process this, you're going to struggle. So...
And you know, that's why some people, you know, they place their happiness in weight loss, and they're like, I will be really happy when I lose weight, and you know, that's a questionable statement. But from first-hand experience, you watch a person deal with the physical aspect of it and not deal with the mental aspect of weight loss. And then they lose weight and then they realize, oh shit, my life's exactly the same, because you're yet to have dealt with the environmental factors that have caused you to be unhappy in the first place.
So this is why I will say I am such an advocate. If you are needing professional help on this, which I actually think a lot of people do need professional help, in the sense of whether it's accountability or speaking about things or just being coached or just having somebody there or just understanding things greater, I think that period of time in which you do that needs to be longer than a few weeks. Because for you to overcome these things, you need to learn. And learning does not come easily. And I think it also comes with a huge amount of time and consistency. And we all know, to lose weight, you've got to be consistent, like blah, blah, blah. But it's actually the fact of like, you can lose shit tons of weight in 8 weeks if you really wanted to. Off you go, bye-bye, scales have gone down, new clothes, blah, blah. But have you actually addressed why you held all that weight in the first place?
Exactly.
Because if you haven't, I can guarantee it's going to come back, and it's going to come back twice as fast, because you have not addressed those emotions behind why you were morbidly overweight. Why did I do that? Why have I not understood this? And this takes time. It's not something you can be impatient over. Whether or not you want to see the physical result, you're going to spend the rest of your life either picking up the pieces, or you take the other approach where you learn. So that could be that when we deal with clients on a long-term basis, like, we're going to be honest with you, majority of our clients coach with us for years. They don't coach with us for months, they coach with us for years. And there is a reason behind that, because we are that guiding force to helping them in so many different ways. Myself and Mark are not just your personal trainer, you know what I mean? We genuinely take every aspect of your lifestyle and we manage it the best we can. And in those times, we're going to overcome certain hurdles in our clients' lifestyles. And those could be massive periods of stress. On the top of my head, it could be a recent client going through a divorce. You know what I mean? That's
Correct.
a huge amount of stress. It's
Massive.
It's a lot of uncertainty, whether that's financially, whether it's with the children, whether it's, emotionally. And so we're overcoming that one step by step, and how we can manage these situations when they arise, technically like life coaching. So it is one of these things where I get very sensitive and triggered when people say, like, well, I'm stressed, so I just can't lose weight, my cortisol's too high. It's like, number one, do you even know what cortisol is? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this is the thing, like, this is why I want to clarify what cortisol is.
And people have thrashed, I haven't seen it so much recently, but in the previous years, people have thrashed that word around, like,
They do it now. We've had clients
diets,
even bring it up.
yeah, but like diets that reduce cortisol,
foods that help, fuck off.
Exercise that reduces the cortisol, and using those catchwords and those buzzwords. It's without you having gone, like Georgia says, without you having gone and had an actual blood test that has been predetermined by a professional, then you're none the wiser. And for people then to make assumptions and like put you into a category and into a box,
that you are unable to do anything.
Do you know what I mean? It's very, very manipulative to go and tell people that there's something essentially wrong with them, in the guise of then profiting and being able to then sell them a solution, whether it's financially or I can help you with X, Y, and Z, which creates like an emotional attachment towards certain individuals that put out
I would just like
narrative.
to say, like, I'm talking to general population here. I'm not talking to unique types of people who might have disorders, diseases. I'm talking general population. You are fucking fine.
You're okay.
Nothing is wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with you. Even if you've got weight on you, there's nothing wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just the fact that you need to understand your management tactics and overcome those emotions, talk through those emotions,
and
understand why you do things.
Addressing your environment as well is very, very important.
Yeah, massively so.
Very
and I
important.
think going off of maybe directly about weight loss, stress, we've all got our vices for stress and how we overcome this. I do think that if you feel good in yourself, that's very different to looking good and what you think is looking good. If you feel good in yourself on a day-to-day basis, you'll likely be able to manage stress a lot better than those that have vulnerabilities. And, one of the podcasts we were going to do today was about the impact of alcohol on the body, and this is just directly related to stress, because there's a number of different vices that we all reach to de-stress. But is that compounding your health long term? Yes.
You could.
What could those vices be?
um, consuming copious amounts of alcohol,
Smoking,
smoking,
over exercising,
over exercising,
sex,
panic eating,
sex, like wanting sex
binge
frequently,
eating.
binge eating. These are all factors which you kind of use as a vice to de-stress.
Yeah,
So how
recreational
many
drugs.
people do you think listening to this go home from or at home, they've had a busy day at work and reach for a glass of wine? How many people wake up in the morning and say, oh, fuck, I need a cigarette. I just need to
Yeah.
de-stress from waking up. Do you know what I mean? I'm literally like, fuck, I get it. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
but like
Sometimes, like, I
you've
used to smoke when
yeah,
I was
we
younger,
used
so
to
I
smoke.
can't.
So like when we used to like after a stressful day, you'd want to, the first thing you do is remove yourself from the environment and have a
But
cigarette.
also environment links in here. So if your colleagues that you're around are also smoking, maybe it's the only time of the day that you can get a break.
Yeah.
You're very stressed. You're gonna go and get that cigarette straight
Yeah,
in. You're out the
everyone's a
box and
social
lit up.
smoker as well. After they've had a couple of drinks, then everyone's like, "Let's have a couple
Yeah,
of
but
fags."
environment is dictating that. So who you're around as to why you're actioning certain things. And so stress, are you helping yourself with long-term stress or chronic stress if you go back and effectively try and de-stress from something that is an external depressant? So smoking isn't directly linked to depression as such clinically. There is links to higher blood
I
pressure
mean,
and
it's a
obviously
carcinogenic, obviously. So
functionalities of the body. Maybe if you've got higher blood pressure, you're more likely to feel, to be more heightened in, a number of different factors. But alcohol, well, that's a fucking known depressant. And I can't go too much into this because we do want to do a full podcast on alcohol. And it's just, in my opinion, eye-opening that so many people normalize
yeah,
alcohol intake.
it's so hypocritical for people that drink on a regular basis to throw shade or to judge other people with regards to any other habit or action when oh, look at so and so,
So
oh,
fat, do you
he's
know what I mean?
smoking a spliff, and yet that person's drinking 3 bottles of wine on a daily basis. Do
Oh,
you know
we
what I
see this so
mean?
much. Like people will, I've dealt with
It's
people like this. In fact, where
yeah,
people are
you've
like,
sat
oh, they're
there.
so overweight. It's kind of gross that they use like food as their emotional mechanism to like getting things
Yeah,
that. And it's like you just knocked back like 6 porn
yeah,
star martinis, Sandra.
come
Like
on.
calm the fuck down. Like, do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's not normal to be drinking that and to like. But whilst you get that drunk and fucking sedate yourself, you're busy probably trolling people online or judging others
Do you know
for
what
what
the
they
funny
look
thing
like.
is like with drinking, people that stop drinking, they like
There's
it's
no
so difficult.
downfalls, like
It's so
literally.
difficult to do it because it's so difficult to socialize and be around other really, really drunk people. But when you say that you don't drink or I'm not having a drink, the judgment cast upon you,
Oh my
people
God.
look at you like you are mentally challenged.
I stopped drinking because it didn't do well for me. I had drunk a lot and I consumed a huge amount of alcohol to effectively, I guess, try and numb my feelings. Like I dealt with a lot of mental health pain, and the same with probably Mark and his family. Like alcohol is a mechanism which is used frequently for people. And unfortunately, like I know that thing of like when I stopped drinking, I was really young. Do you know what I mean? So in that social environment, people are like, "What the fuck's wrong with you?" Do you know what I mean? Like, why are you not having a drink? Just have one. You're so boring. Do you know what I mean? Why are you doing this? Do you know what I mean? Oh, of course she's driving. Do you know what I mean? It's like all
Imagine
of
if we
these.
had that same energy for like cocaine or like marijuana or like ecstasy. You're like, come on, just do a line. No, I'm good, thanks. You're so boring. Rah, rah, rah. It's just so twisted.
It is twisted. And you know what's even more twisted is like, you know what a friend asked me about a year ago? Like I hadn't seen her in a while, and she said, "How do I?" She said, "What do you think I look like? Do you think my face look?" Because obviously we're all aging now. Do you know what I mean? And I'm probably like going to keep myself as fresh and young as possible because of my lifestyle habits. But she said to me, she was like, "What do you think my skin's doing?" She was like, "I just feel a bit like it's a bit at the moment." I just said to her, "You look like you've aged 10 years. I'm sorry, I'm going to be totally honest," because all she'd been doing
It was
is
on the lash.
raging,
Yeah.
like, whether that was huge amounts of alcohol intake. And she took the advice on board and calmed down. She was feeling so much better about it. But I can tell you this, anybody that gives up alcohol, there is absolutely zero downfalls to it. Nobody's coming out and feeling worse.
It does impact your social life because when you don't drink and you're
you
around
heavily
drunk
judge
people,
others
you're
around
like,
you.
oh my God, everybody's sloppy, everyone's slurring their words, everyone's falling over the place. It's like the general behavior is sloppy is the best way to describe it. So when people don't drink, they're like, Jesus, is this how I behave?
But also, then again, going back to stress, like, you know, if you don't drink, for example, you choose not to make that decision. Like, I actually don't want to have a drink tonight. And somebody's there like, do you know what? Like, you need to have a fucking drink. Like, I can't believe this. You need to loosen up. Like, come on, let's have some fun. Do you know what I mean? All of these subconscious things try and make themselves feel better as to why you're not drinking. It puts you in additional stress to not only maybe overthink, oh, maybe I should start drinking again. Or maybe, you know, maybe they're right. Do you know what I mean? Maybe, like, if I do drink, I'll feel better. You know, and that's environments that you shouldn't really be putting yourself on a day-to-day basis. So would I rather sacrifice the social environment of somebody being like that?
So what would you recommend for people that associate de-stressing with self-care habits that are not... Two questions that are de-stressing
Right,
from...
Say what one question
Okay,
first.
first question. What is your suggestions for people that associate de-stressing with harmful self-care habits? And then the second question is, what are your suggestions for people where the stress of
Right,
the
can you
environment...
ask me the first one, and then I'll answer it, and then ask me the second one?
Okay, first one. What are your suggestions for people that associate de-stressing with self-care habits that are over time will compound in a negative manner?
It really depends on the situation that you're in. Now, I'm not going to speak for the likes that really abuse alcohol on a on a very great scale.
It could be other things outside of alcohol. So
could
just
be,
imagine insert,
anything, sex,
it could be
whatever.
anything.
You need better distractions. So one thing that's linked very, very highly to that dopamine effect, and in which we seek to feel better, is exercise. So that rush of endorphins, that, you know, that feel where you feel good about yourself. And they always say there's like never a bad exercise session. You know, once you're there, even if you've just done 10 fucking minutes, you're going to feel slightly better about things. And I think those that have never delved into exercise, now I'm not saying fucking lifting weights, powerlifting, fucking throwing yourself on the floor. I'm saying just exercising, moving your body, getting some fucking fresh air, maybe getting yourself a little bit of out of breath, you know, all of these things. That is very much similar to going and sedating yourself somehow. Now, if you say, for example, you like to smoke, normally there is two factors behind smoking. There's those that very much enjoy the taste of smoking, the nicotine, the tar, that like, oh, couldn't imagine a day without it. I can think of a prime example, your Uncle George.
Oh my God.
Oh, God. Oh my God. You know,
Uncle George, shout out to Uncle George if you're listening to this.
Listen to this, doesn't he? Own pair of
He
headphones.
can smoke a cigarette. If there was like an Olympics for smoking cigarettes, he would be, top 10 at least.
Yeah, but like the guy can't even sit on an airplane without having to he can't sit at lunch.
He's got a fake wooden cigarette that he hangs around his neck so he can suck on it.
It's almost
when he's at a restaurant, because he can't literally go more than 10 minutes.
I honestly mean this with the best of my interest. Knowing very close people dear to our heart who have been diagnosed with cancer and all of this, who live just a very normal lifestyle with no kind of, I guess, errors, not like red flags. I have no idea how he's not ridden with that. I physically don't want to say that. That's fucking... No, but it's almost astounding. And I feel like those people who are so addicted and have got that far, sometimes it's best not to stop.
You see every once in a blue moon, you see a 96-year-old woman who smoked every day of her life. Do you know what I mean? It's every...
This is weird.
There's just statistical outliers. and if he stopped smoking cigarettes, there would
Yeah,
be
I
a
think he'd
problem.
die. Yeah. But the element of what I was saying about smoking is there's people that very much enjoy smoking, and that's probably just come from time. Like when I used to smoke, I didn't. I never used to smoke actual cigarettes. I used to smoke menthol cigarettes. Okay, and I did used to smoke actually, and then I was like, oh, this is actually kind of gross. Like, do you know what I mean? The
Oh,
smell of
yeah.
it, like the taste of it, I was like, this is gross. I'll go on to fucking slimline fucking menthols and just try and be
What
one of
about
those
the click
pretentious
ones?
cunts.
The
Yeah.
click ones were alright.
Yeah, the menthol ones.
Yeah.
But where my problem came in with smoking was not the fact that I liked to smoke. It was the fact
Yeah.
I had severe ADHD. I had to do something all the time. I couldn't stop moving. Like anybody that knows me, like when
Gives you a lot of
I have to
purpose,
do something.
smoking.
I draw on shit. I draw all over my shit when I'm talking to someone. Not in the sense that I'm not concentrating. I'm very good at I just have to do something with my hands, and that's probably why, as coaches, we're really good because we're.
It gives you something to do when you need a cigarette, because you need a cigarette every couple of hours, or so
Some
you
people like half
always
an hour.
do this. Okay, I'm gonna do this you decop I can never say that word, so I'm not even gonna bother. But you like put everything into boxes, like within a time frame. You're like, I'll do this, then I'll go for a cigarette. You go for a cigarette,
Like when I
15,
get off
20
the aeroplane,
minutes.
I'll have a cigarette.
Then you come back,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Then it's do this, then I need to go for a cigarette, get cigarettes, buy cigarettes.
Yeah, like and so it's that whole thing where it is like obviously it's similar to like drugs, you know what I mean? You always watch those programs of people
Yeah.
like scatty about taking fentanyl, do you know what I mean? Like and it's like their whole drive on a day-to-day basis is nothing to do with anything other than going and getting drugs, you know.
Yeah,
and
drugs and
look, this is a very
cigarettes.
sad situation to be in. It's not something that we should be normalizing as being, and it's not something we're taking the piss out of. But there are reasonings to why we do things. And you ask me, like, what do you do? Like, you need better distractions. Those distractions could be, like, I know parents where one of the parents smokes and the other one doesn't. And the parent that doesn't smoke gets really fucking annoyed that the parent that does smoke kind of just utilises their time outside having a cigarette, or you know what I mean, and whilst they're trying to manage the kids, should they have put the energy into managing the kids, do you know what I mean, maybe they wouldn't necessarily need the distraction of a cigarette. Now obviously, as I said, there's that element of I need to de-stress
And addiction to nicotine.
of course, addiction.
Like,
But like I would be, and I think I've spoken to friends about this and people that I know, like sometimes we do just smoke for the sake of just fucking smoking. Like when you're younger, back in the day, vaping is now the big thing in the younger generation. Now, I'm not glorifying any of this, but let's be real. It is like vapes are fucking everywhere. And like people like my grandparents have a breakdown of the news that there's like a vape fucking epidemic, you know what I mean? All of this shit. But cigarettes, when I will never forget my first cigarettes. I didn't enjoy it,
no.
but I did it because everybody was doing it, and then I
'Cause it's
caught
cool.
on to the fact it was cool.
Yeah.
It was fucking cool. Like,
It
oh
was
my god,
cool.
you don't
Oh
smoke.
my god, you had a
I'll
cigarette.
never forget when I was very grateful that my father bought me a car when I passed my driving test, and he specifically said to me, like, please don't smoke inside of it. But it was fucking cool to smoke and drive. Like, what the fuck? I devalued the car within bloody seconds because I chain smoked in it. I got burn marks all over the seat. And I only did that because it's fucking cool. Music's up, windows down, cigarette, fucking, I am living the life. I am breathing cancer right now. Like, literally, like, I can't wait to do it again and again.
Do you think that was glamorized by, like you see that in the movie? I guess back then you see that in the movies,
where
replicated on
smoking came from.
TV.
It was quite weirdly back in
No,
the
because
day.
back
it was
in
quite
like
feminine to
very,
smoke.
very, very back in the day, and this is conspiratorial, but tobacco companies are obviously huge billion-dollar industries that used to, they used to say promote smoking and be like, do this to strengthen
Yeah.
your lungs.
Like my grandfather,
So we're talking about
who is a
numerous,
very high up medical professional. Like
numerous
I'm talking very high up
generations
in-
of people that smoked and loved smoking, and then most. I think you could smoke on an airplane. You
yeah,
could
but
smoke
like he
anywhere.
got out the book the other day when we were at their house.
Oh yeah, there's
and
first
it was-
generation.
He
That was
used to smoke, and it was told to them. Like, and I'm saying he has been a medical professional for fucking like 80 years, something great. Like, it was honestly, he's been, medicine is through and through in him, and for years, even like studying or going into doing placements in King's and all of that. Like, he smoked. and he smoked regularly, and so did his colleagues,
Yeah,
until obviously the
'cause
science came out. Like, oh my god! And he showed us the first ever book
I
that
think
he was
it was
given.
unbiased science, because I think tobacco companies have been caught and paid fines for literally paying scientists to write positive reviews and or hide information that said this is
It's
really
weird though,
bad
like how
for
we
you.
even think that just inhaling fucking smoke on a day-to-day basis is going to do us any kind of
Yeah.
good. I mean, look, there's for a stressful matter, like, I totally get it, and this is why, like, I'm not going to sit here as like a fucking, I'm very qualified in as a health professional, but it's not to say that I have not had personal experience with all of this. I get why people do things, whether it's drugs,
Yeah,
drink
everyone's got a
alcohol,
vice.
smoke,
Yeah.
have sex regularly, too regularly, like pets. I get it. Do you know what I mean? We are
Yeah.
all ingrained to just need something that, like, just lets go of things, that kind of takes us away from an environment. But is this compounding our day-to-day stress? Like, if you're, there is this thing to say where, like, it's probably going to make the situation worse, over the years, like, your blood pressure might increase to the point where you have more physical stress on the body, or all of these things where you are then going to give yourself limiting factors to helping yourself. And
Yeah.
if we relate back to weight loss, well, most people would say that smoking helped weight loss because it meant that you didn't eat because you were smoking. You know what I mean? That was the whole back in the 1900s. Like, for the women, it was like, just smoke cigarettes, just don't eat. It's that whole thing of like, a cigarette's a laxative. Like, I'm just going to shit out all of the fuck I've just,
Yeah, and dietary habits promoted by people that are like supermodels, that all they do is smoke cigarettes and drink caffeine.
Yeah, like all of these things where,
Yeah, so it's always been pretty glamorized, and then movies and general Western culture.
I would say
And
there's
then it's
two
also
big
super
things that I would
cultural in
start
terms of,
with.
like, when you go to Egypt, everybody's smoking something. Do you know what I
I
mean?
think that one of the biggest tactics you can do, if I think, to give up smoking, if I'm not mistaken, is you effectively, when you need a cigarette, you then go and take yourself to do something outside of where you would normally smoke. So that could be like that you would go outside of the front door and have a cigarette. Like, maybe you walk out the door and you walk around the block, or you sit and you do something which distracts you. Now, it's going to be bloody hard if you're addicted to something. I know this. I've been there. Like, giving up anything that you think is good for you or not so good for you, but you just really enjoy doing, it's going to be hard. But I think it's the same with why exercise probably, now it's not a compensation thing. It's not like, oh well, if you give up alcohol now, I'm just going to fucking over exercise the whole time. It's the fact that they are very linked in the sense of your brain and how your brain functions. It is really linked to, like, endorphin, like the rush that we want and we get is very closely linked to exercise. So I would say that one of the biggest things, if you're not into exercise now, is to potentially look at that as your de-stressing factor. When you get home from, work for a day, whether you want to be tech free or whether you want to listen to a podcast and go for a walk,
or read a book.
I know it sounds so absolutely miserably boring, but all you're doing is numbing it. You're not solving a problem. You're just numbing yourself from the stress. Are you going to wake up to the next day with that current stress? Yes. Are you going to probably feel worse when you've sedated yourself? Yes. And that's going to happen every single day that you action that habit. So I do think breaking that habit, whether it's like, you don't do it all, like, you don't need to be cold turkey. If you've not got like a fucking problem, I wouldn't approach it cold turkey. I'd approach it like, I'm coming back from home on Monday, and on Monday I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to read a book, or I am going to go swimming, or I'm going to take the kids to the playground. On Tuesday I'm going to come home and I'm going to have one drink. You know what I mean? On Wednesday I'm going to repeat habit from Monday. You know what I mean? And you try and effectively make those baby steps to overcoming that de-stressing factor. And honestly, the more you do that and you feel like you're not reliant on something, the less stress you're going to feel on a day-to-day basis. Because you're almost like, you're almost riling yourself up to, I'm so stressed, I'm fucking gonna get that drink and I'm gonna drink it, I'm gonna
Yeah,
feel
it's like
so good.
there's a positive association between, it's, you start to cement that in your brain, even though it's counterproductive to your
Like, you know, if
general
you
health.
drink
So
that, you're gonna feel better.
my second question is, what are your suggestions for people where their main source of stress is their environment, and that environment is their partner or their
Okay, so in the
spouse?
sense of like your partner likes to drink, or
No,
like,
your partner is the main source of stress in that relationship, which is then having a negative impact on your mental health.
very hard question, because there's multiple ways we could go down this, and I think we're going to take the least complex route, because I would just like to reiterate personal context. Like, you know, some women or men go through horrific like domestic abuse and situations
Yeah,
where like
okay,
I can't talk about that, because that is
let's
individual
not go with
context.
statistical outliers. Let's just go with your general run of the mill, your husband or your wife. You're trying to better yourself, you're trying to improve, and there's the environment, which is the main source of stress, is your spouse. Maybe they're not, maybe they're passing comments, maybe they're subconsciously facilitating habits that are moving you the opposite direction.
Like enabling, yeah.
Yeah, enabling,
Yeah, which
that
is,
kind of, just your general, nobody's beating anybody up and nobody's smoking a crack pipe, just your average, do you know what I mean? Your average,
so
basically
the
your
first
partner's
the
being a
one thing
dick,
that,
and you just,
no,
how
Mark,
do
just
you
shut the fuck
suggest
up.
that?
You've literally reiterated that like 7 times. I've got the situation and the question you're asking me. I would say, don't tell your partner to shut the fuck up. Like, literally, no, that's a very common way of just being like, do you know what, get out. Something that, again, leading to how we have progressed. And actually, no, I'm not going to blame this on the internet. We struggle as a society of humans to actually communicate things these days. Like, we struggle, because it's almost like back in the day, like take yourself back to like 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, before like
Yeah.
internet really came about. You wouldn't, a lot of subjects were quite taboo, you know, between speaking with a partner or communicating your concerns, or, you know, and so if anything, you were kind of just shut up, you know, and you kind of just got on with things. So that's the difference of generations. But if we talk about now, you need to communicate with each other first and foremost. You have got two separate brains. You both function very differently. You have chosen a partnership because you love and you like each other's personalities, your behavior traits, and you enjoy each other's company, and you feel a sense of love. But just because you love someone doesn't mean that there's a cemented relationship there. So love can be shown in multiple different factors. It could be sex, it could be kissing, it could be service, it could be anything. And I think when you are struggling with a partner who might be influencing those factors, you cannot expect them to understand it. So you have to, in a non-judgmental, non-shitty manner, you need to break it down to them and communicate what you are wanting to achieve going forward. Now, I am a firm believer, and I fucking mean this, if Mark did not support me in my goals going forward, I would end our marriage, because I don't think it works for the both parties. I don't think that it would be progressive for our life going forward if we were working against each other.
Yeah, it sucks.
So it would completely and fucking utterly suck. There's got somebody that wants to do something, the other person can't be asked. Now, something that is very undermined is just communicating. Taking 5 steps as to, 5 points or even 3 points. You maybe have written it down, do you know what I mean, before you've even converted, and you say, not in a weird way, like my parents used to do this to me, and like whenever you were in shit, it was like, you need to come home, we're going to have a talk. And it was just like, oh my God, like, fuck, you're going to be, somebody's going to be just disappointed here. It's not that kind of element of communication. It's not something where you need to therapize your partner. You're not a professional in this. It's just bracing that conversation where you go, I am really struggling here. Maybe I'll take an example. I'm dealing with a client right now who, technically she's a housewife. She doesn't work on a day-to-day basis. She looks after the house and her husband goes to work. And she has been dealing with a situation where she is pre-diabetic. She has very, very high levels of body fat and she's got huge amounts of hereditary diseases in the family. And her husband likes to come home, get a takeaway, encourage that thing of, oh no, you don't need to cook. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's fine. You know what I mean? But she is the only one in that relationship whose health is going backwards and dramatically. Now, they're both sat at the age of around 55, okay? So you're sitting at quite a predetermining factor as to how your longevity of life is going to go forward at that kind of age. If you are struggling manically with your health at 55, yes, you can overcome things, 100%. But it is going to become harder the older you get. So that compounding factor has led her to cause a sort of a resentment. She doesn't want her husband to come home because she knows, not the fact that she doesn't love him, she loves him dearly, but she knows he's going to encourage her to do things that she doesn't feel mentally strong managing. So it's effectively what we've done is we've taken that scenario and we don't expect the partner to be on board all of a sudden, but we expect somebody to communicate, to bring up the points which are highlighting. Now, most people's problems are the fact that maybe their health is progressing backwards. It could be you are holding a lot of weight. It is now, whether you like it or not, I'm going to say this and I'm going to say it and you're going to get offended if maybe you're not going to get offended. If you are holding excess body weight and a lot of it, that is not healthy. It is doing absolutely no benefit to you on a day-to-day basis. Forget what everybody else says. That is factually correct scientifically. So if you're going to brace your partner, like, I've got a huge weight loss goal here, or I need some help, you need to say, this is how I'm going to do the plan of action. And you encourage them at certain points to help you. Now, if these dots continue not to add up, then there is issues here that need to be overcome between the two of you. But you would like to think that if you communicate your factors in a non-judgmental, non-blaming manner, you are likely to become more on the same page. So normally you need to lead by example of some degree. That's what I always say.
Yeah, but it's easier said than done sometimes when the other person is having an impact and influencing you, trying to lead by example.
But I always say this.
Do you know what I mean?
Forget the unique complex of
So if
situation
you can't
of
get
people.
momentum,
Nobody's got a
how
gun
are
to your
you
head.
meant to...
Nobody's killing your children. Nobody's slaughtering your dog if you fucking don't have a drink, if you don't eat that takeaway. Nobody's doing that. This is when it comes down to whether or not you want it. If you want something, normally as humans, we're going to go and get it. Whether it's anything, whether it's going to help you or not help you, you're going to go and fucking get it. Take a drug addiction. What you shouldn't be doing this. Do you know what I mean? When you're doing these things, it's not always that you're unaware of what it's doing to you, but you need to go and get it. You need to go and fix that problem. And it's the same thing. Like, the stats in the UK alone in relationships, over 2,000 divorces happen every single week. So there is things where partnerships are formed and they don't work. And sometimes you're better off without that person. And if you have spent time and time again communicating and all you're getting is backlash, then clearly your priorities are not the same. Yeah. And maybe that's where you take it a step further to then go and therapize that situation to overcome it. Help, professional help. But I think you underestimate, and I think a lot of people think that all of our brains are the same. I think a lot of people think, do you know what? Like, he's thinking exactly the same as what I'm thinking, and she's thinking what she's thinking, and he's thinking what he's, you know what I mean? We're not.
No.
Half the time, like, like sometimes I'm sure like most people when you get into a relationship maybe you're like, oh, I wonder if he's thinking about other girls. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hope he's not thinking about
Do
fucking
you
his
think?
ex-girlfriend.
Do you think I think about that? Have you ever thought that?
Yeah, I would say I actually did think that at the start of our relationship. Like, just to put into context, like Mark used to train like some really unbelievably good-looking people, and like people always used to say, "Oh my god, that client's so hot," and you'd be standing there like, "Yeah, I know," like literally, and you would be worried. Like, seeing as you stepped over the barrier with me, how's not to say that you wouldn't do that again
I
with a
didn't
client?
exactly step over the barrier. I jumped.
You inserted in.
I penetrated the barrier.
You penetrated the barrier whilst holding my hands whilst we
Yeah,
exercised.
you
And fucking thrusting in my face.
you used to try. You tried to kiss me, and I had to
Shut
turn
the
my
fuck up.
turn my
And
cheek.
again, sometimes you can tell your partner to shut the fuck up because there's
Yeah.
moments like that.
It's true though.
It's not true.
You tried to
Like,
kiss me, and I had to deny you.
you were a poor little African boy, and without your British English rose, it would have been nada. Nada.
Yeah, you were.
You
And
were
I say
what?
this almost on every podcast.
Wet.
Thirsty. Oh, jeez, wet. Yeah,
It's the
both.
same thing though, isn't it?
Both.
Or
Wet,
dry. Do you
thirsty,
know what I mean? I'm not sure. The Sahara.
dripping,
Dripping. Like a beef
moist.
fat dripping chip. Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean?
like
Yorkshire pudding.
like a moist Yorkshire
Would
pudding.
you say that's same the case now though?
Yeah, I reckon you're still pretty moist.
That's the thing, we don't have the same brain, do we? And that's just highlighting it. Because you clearly assume things that I wouldn't say I'm dripping for you, babes. Do you know
Well,
what I
you
mean?
were yesterday.
Oh my god. Do you know what I mean? Like, is at what point? So inappropriate.
I know.
Although not inappropriate because it's a fucking relationship. So
Yeah.
like, if you bang, you fucking bang. You just don't need to
Yeah.
tell people about it. Well, sometimes you do.
And I was talking to one of our clients, just like,
What the fuck? You were talking to one of our clients about this?
yeah,
Our
no,
clients
but
listen
we
to
also
this.
discussing, we also, no, it's just, it was discussed with a client. Then we talked about it with Matt with regards to like our parents, like in terms of like them being lovey-dovey or like
Oh my god.
physical affection, kissing, holding hands, having sex, X, Y, and Z, like,
What was your experience with that, Mark?
and I've seen my parents maybe kiss 3 times.
Again, I will 150% say this. I have never seen your parents kiss.
No.
I think that your parents have like an unbelievable relationship. Like, nobody's going to understand this because you're not fucking part of our family. But like, literally, like, your parents have gone through a lot of shit. Your parents have overcome the things. There is something in Africa which you can never undermine. The attitude of people just getting on with things and not complaining. Like, there is something to be said for that because you go to the UK and it's the complete fucking opposite.
Yeah,
like, you know, it's like,
it's
oh,
a
there's a
given,
problem.
though.
We can't overcome this. Let's all have a breakdown. You know, oh my God, it's
Yeah.
raining all the time. I'm miserable. In Africa, you just get on with
Yeah,
things.
there's
You
a reason.
find a
There's a
solution.
reason why when you go certain places, like especially in the UK, and you have one Zimbabwean or South African working there, you end up with.
But
a
I
whole
also really
bunch, a
admire that
whole
your
crew.
father came in. Your mum had technically 2 marriages. Was it 2 marriages or 2?
No, 2 children from a
Was it a
previous
previous-
marriage. Yeah.
Yes. So she's had 2 marriages. So she's in her
Yes.
current, and she had 2 children, which are obviously your half brothers. Now, obviously they're like blood, but your brother, your dad,
Yeah,
took that
stepped
responsibility on from a very, very young age. For that, you know, if you're,
Yeah.
you know, so I do really respect that, and I think there's relationships where really are formed. Like again, going back to the whole what society says as to like what you should be doing and what makes a good relationship. Like, we know that if you don't insert a penis at some time or rub a clitoris or whatever, that maybe you're going to suffer in your sexuality, you know, in your relationship as a couple. But I've known plenty of people that we've either worked with or are friends or personal experiences whose whole relationship is just sex and they have no underlying like fucking connection barring that.
Yeah, I
And
guess.
whether it's just going out drinking, sex. Yeah, we've got a great sex life. He makes me fucking dress up all the time. He handcuffs me. Fucking I come and fucking orgasm all the time. Yeah, I know plenty of people like that, but actually they don't last the long run because they don't actually have a connection. And when that sex spell sort of dries out, maybe around 40, 50, the hormones start declining, people aren't moving so well, that's when the divorce starts to come into
There's
play.
a younger model knocking.
Yeah, exactly. Knock, knock. Hi, I'm a
Yeah.
Russian prostitute. Let's not laugh. I've dealt with so
Don't
no,
stereotype, Georgia.
not
What
stereotyping, but I've dealt with many people like this, so it's not something that you can't say that I've had experience.
most of the escorts that we have trained over the years have not even been Russian?
I'm not talking about who I've trained as escorts.
Because escorts have a
Trust
lot of
me, do you
money.
want us to do a fucking podcast on that? Because that is an interesting topic.
Escorts have got lots of money.
So much money, and if it's not coming from them, it's coming from being paid by a sugar daddy.
That's
I've
maybe
genuinely
they don't.
had bank transfers from people that are not the
you know,
client, shall we say.
It just
They're the person paying for it.
like to think that there are men or women that are outlaying like 100 grand a year just to pay for some.
More. Oh
No,
my
I'm just saying,
God.
okay, as a minimum, okay, for the people that we've worked with, an absolute minimum of 100 grand a year, just for that person every once in a while, even though they have their own family, and it just blows
I know,
my
it's
mind.
absolutely bizarre. Like I trained.
Yeah, it just blows. It
I
really
trained.
does.
There was one.
Think of how much you could
Yeah, but
spend
she
that
was
money on
getting
other
paid.
stuff.
Her life was getting paid for by a
Oh, no, that
28-year-old
was
Norwegian
ridiculous.
guy.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. Now, not to say that she's not allowed multiple different partners. The vibe there was not to fuck. Now, she was absolutely beautiful. Like, she walked in a place, and I don't care what Mark says, because you'd be like, her voice is annoying because she's South African, but like
Cape Townian.
Cape Town, yeah. But she was hot. Like, she walked in places, and all I can say is every fucking man in that gym was like, fucking, yeah, I want a bit of that. Do you know what I mean? She'd had a lot of surgery done. She, the lips, the bum, the this. She didn't look too fake. She was just fucking hot. Like, I knew she was hot, and everybody around her was like, who the fuck is that? Do you know what I mean? And I was like, okay, cool. And everyone was like, what does she do for a job? And I'm like, she's a model. And like, literally, and she was an escort, and a professional escort, and my fucking God, did she live the life. And it was almost just like, it was interesting. Like, I was just very interested. She trusted and confided, but it was crazy. Like, just, there was men paying, like, I'm talking tens of thousands. All of her house was paid for. All of her travel was paid for. All of her clothes, her designer, her beauty treatments, her training, everything was paid for. And she didn't even have to entertain these guys maybe once every 3 months, maybe when they came.
Do you think she could have been doing that?
I respect it. Because I actually genuinely
financial
believe...
dominatrix. Where she was
No, I
just
don't
like,
think she was financial dominatrix. I think she had 3 very serious people who paid her a lot of money for either escorting them to events or like I think that Norwegian guy, if I wasn't mistaken, was a tech guy. Now there is an inherent trend with little tech boys that have a lot of money who probably have been circumcised. I'm sorry I can say this because I'm fucking Jewish, do you know what I mean? But have been circumcised.
What's wrong with being
It's not. Most
circumcised?
people say that it's better, but
Helmets
who knows?
versus Cavaliers. You know what I mean?
Oh my God, do not refer to yourself as one of those. Are you circumcised, Mark?
No.
Yeah, but some women would say it's better not having some flabby bit of foreskin. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I can
It's a bit weird,
appreciate
do you know what I mean?
that.
A bit of fucking bits of crusty bits all over it. You just
Or you
don't know.
clean
Men
it,
are gross.
otherwise, most
Men are so gross. Like, let me just suck your dick whilst you've just gone for a piss and it's going to taste wonderful. Like, no. Do you know what I mean? It's not the case. Like, only porn stars like enjoy having a cock in their mouth. I'm sorry. Like, nobody really, unless you've got zero gag reflex, is going to enjoy. Because
there are people that
yeah,
enjoy
like gay
having
men,
penises
obviously,
in
my
their
gay
mouth.
best friends. They obviously
No,
like
but not just gay. There are women that enjoy having penises in
Yes,
their
I
mouth.
know, and I'm sure some of them are listening to them right now. If you enjoy a penis in the mouth, sorry, it's just something that just doesn't really just massively get me going. You know what I mean? But anyway, I just think that. Tech, like going back to tech boys, and they are inherently lonely because they've spent their whole life like programming on a computer. I'm not joking, like genuinely.
Yeah, we're full of stereotypes today.
It's not stereotypical. It is true. Like, we've dealt with so many of them. They sit there, they type away, they fucking on Zoom calls, they're this, they're that, they're around, their shoulders around and forward, they're very insecure, their mum's mummying them too much.
Yeah, they're taking her
Jewish.
1.5 million in an annual salary, or their companies are IPOing on Wall Street. So they're very obviously to pay excessive amounts of money
Does that
to
equate to
fly some
happiness
random. No,
or
I'm just saying,
companionship?
flying some random chick on a private jet. It's not cheap, so you have to be fairly
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God,
substantial.
majority. Well, actually, no, that's a lie because I do know. No, actually, I'd say the majority of people that use escorts have got money. Do you know what I mean? Now, prostitution, slightly different. There is a difference there. Like, I think prostitution is more linked, unfortunately, to like sexual trafficking and the lower end of sex work,
But what
escorting.
about women that have chosen the life of sex work to empower themselves and to live a life on their own terms?
100%, I'm for that. I don't care what you do. If it makes you happy, fine. But
So
there's a lot of women
that
that
could
say that
be
are sedated.
uncategorized as prostitution. So
I would say that there is. You know what? One of my clients said that they went to an Amsterdam sex show and she said she's never seen such sad sex. She said she was
sad.
almost sat there
Why
like.
was it sad?
She said because you just look at them and they just look fucking sad. They're not getting
Oh
paid
yeah,
anything.
could you imagine that was your job?
But that's prostitution for you. I hate to say it. Prostitution has been formed over the years as being available as a piece of meat whenever for a man or a woman or,
Yeah.
or they, she, it, whatever. It was formed from standing on the side of a road or being in an environment, like dressed provocatively or approaching men that at a bar, Escort, slightly different. I actually am kind of for escort because I'm also for the fact that if you can fucking utilise the fact that men have a lot of vulnerabilities and you can utilise it in a profit sense, why the fuck not?
Sure.
Now, a lot of escorts don't actually necessarily need to have sex with their people that are paying them. It's just a level of relationship.
But like that is also a very small statistical outlier.
No, look
where,
at OnlyFans. Look at like all of these
yeah,
things.
but
Like that's
let's
on your
be
own
honest, Georgia. The
terms.
vast majority of men that are paying for an escort on a consistent basis are expecting some level of intimacy.
No, you've definitely not read the books that I have.
What have you read? 50 Shades of Grey?
No, fuck off, you undermining twat. Do you know what I mean? No, you absolute twat. And that's when you then annihilate a man's wallet for being a twat. Do you know what I mean? Then, right then. Actually, you'd be really surprised at how much men are very, very lonely.
Yes.
And actually, sometimes just having the company and going back home to somebody or having somebody at a dinner or having somebody at an event because they are unable, or maybe they are just more willing to work and not have that tie to a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
I actually think that no, a lot of people don't do it for sex, they do it for companionship.
Okay.
That's the difference between escorting and prostitution. Prostitution is linked directly to sexual favours. Escort could just be escorting somebody somewhere, standing and looking pretty. Like my friends have done it. Like one of my sister's best friends is an escort. You wouldn't know. I'm not going to tell her fucking name, but she makes fucking millions.
I'm sure she's at some point,
Just like every time in your job, you're going to come across things you're not too happy about. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sure she's flown to Dubai and had somebody,
Not necessarily. You
done
pick
a
and
number
choose
2
your
on her
fucking
chest.
warriors when you want.
Pardon?
You pick and choose the warriors when you want. You don't need to necessarily, if you're a high class escort, you don't necessarily need to like fucking always take what's good, what you think's coming. Normally, you've got somebody that's an agent. You know what I mean? You're normally like a personality that's
agent.
Yeah, there's agents like a pimp would happen. Now it's not necessarily a pimp. They don't necessarily take a vast cut. But they run a boutique escort agency where they take on very select.
Sounds like people like Andrew Tate facilitating.
No, do you know what I mean? Because that's a male's point of view. But here's me empowering women.
Yeah.
It's women who can actually, where they effectively match. Yeah,
but you just said a pimp, so that's somebody who's exploiting women.
I didn't say. I said like a pimp. Like you could certify as a sense of somebody that controls things, but doesn't take necessarily a cut or control your sexual activities. But what they do is they control the company in which you and 12 other girls of different characteristics are on board, and they have a vast profile of women of all different, personalities,
like people
looks, and then they match you when it comes to what, these men have got to qualify with a lot of money most of the time. They need to go through a pre-qualifying thing. It's not just, to turn up at the
It's
hotel room.
quite sad, isn't it?
Not really.
I think it's quite sad.
Yeah, it's because you've never paid for sex, or I fucking hope not.
No.
Well, I don't know. Some
Why
men
would
do.
you?
Like, what's a stag do? Do you know what I mean? Just paying for a stripper to like rub cream all over you. Like, it's all the same. But without sex, what would you be? Nothing. Your testicles would be explosive. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you couldn't.
My testicles would be explosive.
You'd be like, if sex wasn't a thing for a man, how would you like? How, like, you'd have a wank, wouldn't you? Do you know what I mean?
Well, define define the outcomes of what you're trying to say. Like, well, if you can't have sex with women, obviously you're gonna have a wank. So
it's not just fucking women though. You could be having sex with a man.
You could be having sex with man.
Same sex. Yeah. So.
I mean,
but like, if sex wasn't a thing, like, there is something to be said that like every service is utilised in this world. Why can't sex be one? Now, I do believe there is a fine line, and I'm not fucking encouraging like sexual trafficking here and all of that stuff, or the likes of people like the name that should never be mentioned, Andrew Tate, because that is very different. You are taking vulnerable women from situations, manipulating their mindsets because they don't probably have the education which is matching.
I would
up
assume
to
most people are vulnerable in that environment, though, to a certain degree.
Fuck, Andrew Tate's the most vulnerable man I've ever fucking looked at.
No, but outside of
to.
Andrew Tate, like, just in general, like,
Most,
if you undertake that type of, lifestyle, then you're always going to be vulnerable at some point because somebody is paying for your time, paying for this, paying for that. You are vulnerable at any given moment.
Yes, but what you'll find is if you're a good escort, the likelihood is you're not necessarily like, so for example, like, a good escort would take money from a man, before they even get into anything. There's some sort of agreement. The money is then effectively settled, and then they're effectively an act. Do you know what I mean? They don't bring up the fact that it's money orientated, or you owe me this and you're fucking that. They are suddenly then their companion. Yeah. They go from being a service transaction to, okay, great, yep, we're in a relationship. Crazy, we're going to pretend this at a corporate event. Yeah. Fuck, I mean, how many men do you think you trained that use escort services? Same with me.
Oh, it's sadly a lot.
I've only ever trained one.
Maybe not so much like escorts in the sense of like paying for like a girlfriend on like a monthly retainer, but definitely prostitutes, 100%.
One of my best friend's ex-boyfriends, that's why they broke up.
The stereotypical person in London, it's like you're a well-known, not well-known, but you're a successful man of some sort of stature that lives within southwest London with a big house.
Could be North
if
London.
You don't, or somewhere in London, multi-million-pound house, super successful. Like, if you didn't have numerous encounters with prostitutes and escorts and the above, that would be weird. The average, you take 10 guys.
I asked my father this, okay? Now, this is really weird, but like, my father's worked in finance the whole of his life, okay? Now, financial institutions and environments are inherently known for sex, drugs, and all the rest that comes with it. And we know this because we dealt with it firsthand with clients. Now, and also, I guess you could watch the movies as to what it's like. But it is genuinely, not everywhere, but it is like that in a So I said to my dad, like, have you ever seen somebody do a line of cocaine, or have you ever been around escorts? And I think my dad's so oblivious to it. He was
different
like, no.
generations.
But I was like, what the fuck? You've sat in my father sat in court, like, in boardrooms with, like, not just mafia, like, do you know what I mean? Like, play, I'm not saying it was all to do with trying to manage a country or doing fine. He's sat in boardrooms with multiple different individuals who I
Thing
can
is, if you
guarantee
don't,
somebody would have been doing
if
it
you
at,
haven't
experienced
experienced
it, you're
recreational
not,
drugs and things like that,
which
then
my father never
then you
has.
don't know. But like when you're in a social setting, in a corporate environment, and Stephen excuses himself to the toilet, and he comes back and he's
Suddenly
looking a little
fired
bit
up,
scatty, and he
ready for the
starts,
presentation.
and he's like really talking very quickly, and his pupils have dilated, and his mannerisms become super erratic.
I can clock somebody on drugs
Oh,
within
jeez.
seconds,
Like
literally.
within a split
We had
second.
clients come in, right, I'm ready, let's go. And I'm like, no, my
Yeah,
insurance doesn't
your
cover this. Do you know what I mean?
pupils
Your
are the
pupils.
size of dinner plates. You
Yeah,
need to
literally.
just sit down and have a
But
water.
it's the same with sex. Like, I don't think my father would tell me, actually. But
Oh, God, I
I think
hope
he's
not.
actually oblivious to it.
To what? Sex?
No, he was definitely oblivious to sex. Because actually, going back to why we were even talking about this
Yeah,
conversation, we were talking
parents.
about our understandings of our
Yeah.
parents'
Yeah.
life in general with love and sex. But I don't know if he'd notice. If you go to Mayfair
How
on
many-
Saturday
how
night,
many
guaranteed,
times
go
have-
to the Mayfair Hotel, stand at the bar, order yourself a drink. Now turn around, there'll be multiple women there that look very glamorous, probably with a lot of cosmetic surgery, standing there waiting. Okay. Now, do not get me wrong. That's environment. That's total environment. But you're going to come across it somewhere. Like, we've been in environments where there's escorts. We've been in multiple situations. You're just not necessarily, if you're not part of that crew or looking for it, I guess you're not really.
How many times have you seen your parents kiss each other?
Oh my God. Because we discussed this.
We did discuss this.
Because on the last podcast we did, and how the fuck's this gone from stress into this? I've got no idea, but we'll come back round. Literally, this is the glorification of conversation, because it can go in multiple directions and not just bore people.
Especially with two people with ADHD.
Yeah, literally.
Do you know? Here we go again. Did you notice with Matt, because he's also very ADHD, we would start a sentence, like a topic, like go down a rabbit hole 13 different times, and then 4 hours later finish the sentence off like you just started. Like,
what's so nice though is, just to give some context, Matt's one of Mark's very, very good friends from childhood, Zimbabwean are us. Do you know what I mean? He works on mega yachts. Effectively, he's a captain. He's the captain now.
he's a skipper.
No, he's a captain, isn't he?
Not call him skipper.
Skipper's a sailboat, isn't it? Anyway, either or. He has a very interesting job, because it's sometimes quite similar to in managing high net worth individuals. It's kind of similar. And we had a really good couple of days he came to stay with us, because none of us touched our phones, and all of us just conversed about just so many things. Literally. And I don't know, like, ADHD is so prominent. So, like, especially people that do service jobs, in the sense of how you help people. Like, we've all got, like, things. And, like, you wonder why, like, I was really good at coaching people. It's because I've got really bad ADHD and I've always got to do something. The same with Mark. But we spoke about, like, my mum got upset. She's probably going to listen to this as well, but my mum got upset from the recent podcast we did, because she's a listener, and she was like, I was quite upset about, she's going to be really fucking annoyed right now. Yeah. Quite upset about the fact that you have really expressed that we had no sort of love and desire, like when you were growing up, and you didn't feel that, we never hugged and all of this. And I was just like, okay, cool. When was the ever time that we fucking... You were such a cuddly child. What the fuck? Do you know what I mean? I was like 3. You probably swaddled me. I had no fucking choice. Like... And also, it's also what a child sees and picks up on as to how they behave in their later life.
Because that's all it is
This is
repetition.
the starting point to psychology. Whatever we had or experienced as children, you are going to carry through from your formative years to your adult years as to how you behave in situations. So if you maybe argue with your partner, for example, and there's a common trait that comes back around, which is, you hate me, you're always going to leave me, that's it, like, I can't have you leaving me. Normally, this is because they've maybe experienced a sense of loss as a child. So maybe their parents weren't very present, or they didn't feel like they had somebody that gave them attention, or you felt like somebody always left them, or maybe one of their parents left them and their family broke up, and that is then reiterating in later life. So then going back to the point of my mum bringing up the fact that she was sensitive to what I said. Like, what the fuck? Like, I maybe saw them like hold hands. Like, she's gonna be raging right now listening to this. I maybe
Like,
said
apart from
holding
saying hello,
hands,
like, your family is not very
it's exactly like your
like
family, and
like
exactly why we're the same.
huggy and very kissy and like.
Oh my God, it's so weird. Like, me and my sister, I do not like.
Like-
The first time we hugged was on my wedding day.
You know.
People are going to be like, oh my God.
Yeah, and
so
some
sad.
people
It's
with
not
their
sad, we just go, "Oh."
with their siblings are super.
I would say that
affectionate.
I'm just a very liberal, like, way I think, the way I do things. I've definitely pushed my parents to a very liberal sense of mind because I've tested the waters on numerous times as a child growing up into teenage years. But I think that whole thing of like, if you don't see it, how do you then know it?
How
Think
do
it's
you
normal? And
replicate
it's
it?
exactly
Yeah.
the same as if you see a very stressful environment all the time as a child, or if you see your parents not eating very well, or constantly reverting to alcohol, or you're going to pick up these things, whether or not you follow through with alcohol as well, or you then become resentful of those that drink. It's all these things that you do pick up and then that form you in their way. And I'm just not touchy-feely. I find it fucking weird. Like, if somebody touches me, hugs, embraces for like longer than literally 2 seconds, that's enough. I don't feel like an extensive connection when I hug somebody. And it's not something to feel sorry for me about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the thing. It's not something to feel sorry about. It's exactly
It's
the
just
same
who
as your
you
parents.
are.
It's not to say that
But
we
I
don't have a
I would
great
imagine that
relationship.
your mother hugging your grandmother was also
non-existent. Yeah.
So then it's like how, like, all of a sudden people are expectation of is like you're meant to just walk
my
around
mum
and
used
just
the
like
example.
latch onto people.
We always used to sit on the sofa, the 4 of us. Okay, cool. Well, I was a child, do you know what I mean? Living rent-free, you know what I mean? Going at school, just being a child because you gave birth to me, and then I had to go through the burden of life. And then we sat on the sofa and watched Friday, Top of the Pops when I was like fucking 7. Cool. Like, that's not exactly like a loving relationship, just that means we're spending time together. What's more valuable? Maybe be more valuable is speaking with each other or just being around each other. You don't always have to be embracing to show like love and affection.
Sure.
But I feel like you took the opposite route. Like, I feel like you saw that your parents have a very, very strong connection, a very strong bond. I can't explain it to anybody, you won't understand, because as I said, you're not family, you're not part of the Garlic clan, but they've got a very strong bond. I can see traits of your mother in me, do you know what I mean? Like, in a sense of where it's like, I can literally, like, there's certain things I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like, there's,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
it works. But did you see them kissing, hugging? And I feel like you went the opposite way, where actually you're sort of overcompensating for maybe not seeing it so much, because you're very touchy-feely with me. Sometimes I'm like, just go away. Like,
Yeah, but you are quite fit though, so I can't help myself.
is that how you describe me as fit? Do you know
Very
what? An escort's
attractive.
quite fit. Do you know what I mean? Do you want to go and feel her up?
Who?
An escort.
Oh, jeez.
Well, it's not just
Georgia.
quite fit. That's why I want to touch fit. You are. You're like kissy.
No, you're very-
You're always like, I love you. Like, it's not to say I don't love you. I literally spent every
I don't
day
know.
with
It's just
you.
who I
find
am.
it
It
really hard
doesn't
to say it.
necessarily mean,
I find it easier to say love you lots than I do I love you. And I think that's a
I
family
would say,
thing.
like, even Matt said with his parents, they hardly ever hold hands, kiss. I don't know. So, like,
But I think maybe generation. But then I do know parents that are all amongst each other that are like family.
I think it's just like, your love language. Like, people just show love in different ways. I'm very affectionate and, communicative of it. But then people would say, "Oh, you're not very romantic in the sense like I don't."
Yeah, like I don't ever.
I'm
get a
not
gift
spontaneous
from
and like whisk you away on a helicopter. Do you know what I mean?
Don't ever want to go on a helicopter. It's
Yeah,
guaranteed
you
to
hate
crash.
anything that revolves around a
Spontaneous.
surprise or being spontaneous. So
Because you know that I need to have like pre-rated the hotel, checked out every single
I need
fucking
to
review.
go on TripAdvisor and read all
No,
the
not
one.
TripAdvisor. That's for the povos.
sorry.
Like,
Go
it's
on
Mr.
to
and Mrs. Smith.
go
I'm
on
joking.
to the
I'm fucking
reviews
joking. We're on
and-
TripAdvisor right now.
and read all the 1-star comments to then.
No. What I'll do is it'll be like 97% all fantastic.
Georgia will go
I'll
on
go
to
the least.
you'll go on to a place that's got like 5,670 reviews, 5-star reviews, 3 1-star reviews.
The
Click
people
on
that
the
didn't even
1
stay
stars.
there, they just went to the
Yeah,
restaurant or
then
something.
she's like, no, this is no good.
Fuck,
This
that's so
is no
pessimistic. But that is just me because I want to get my value for money.
But why do people attach negativity towards pessimism? That is my question.
Well, that was actually, I was listening to a podcast about that, and that's a very, that's a very complex
Because
subject.
people need to be more well, not so much pessimistic,
Realistic.
but like subjective is the word.
No, I am so realistic that sometimes I think I overthink things too much. Like, I am the most skeptical person you'll ever come across. I am so aware when I'm being influenced. I'm so aware when people have said things. I'm just so aware of it. And I know that sometimes having your head in the clouds would sometimes be a nicer route to life.
Yeah.
But I also think I look at people and go, what the fuck? Like, do you have any common sense? And I think maybe I've just got too much
I think the moral of this whole podcast is I just forgot what I was about to say.
Well, it's exactly because you've lost the track because you're ADHD, and now will come back in 7 minutes' time.
Just keep on talking, and I'm just
No,
gonna
so
go.
you-
Like
you're
Matt
carrying
says, I'm
on
gonna go.
talking.
I'm gonna go fishing for it quickly in my mind.
But no, I do think that, if we're talking of like, I think when it comes to stress, if we're going to revert back, let's revert back so we can end this podcast in the way that you're like, why am I even listening to this?
Yeah, I'm annoyed now
Why are you annoyed?
because I forgot what I was gonna say. It was quite deep as well.
Oh, well, clearly
Moral
not
of
that
the
deep.
story is
Life.
blank.
that you should never think. The stress, I think that stress and weight loss, stress will affect weight loss if you allow your environment to succumb to your mental health, or you succumb to it in your mental health. Because, again, without speaking of unique situations, a lot of the time we are stressing about things that are completely out of our control. Now, a common example of this could be like, I saw so-and-so's, dealing with this. I hope that maybe they're going to get, that. And if they don't get that, then, oh God, maybe it's going to affect me. Or maybe you're in a job that you can't necessarily change right now. Do you know what I mean? But you can take stepping stones to helping yourselves mentally process that job, or make it more enjoyable for you if you can, or seek things outside of that job, which is going to be better for your environment, or seek challenges outside of your work. There is something to be said that we never further educate ourselves as adults. Now I do, and so do you, because we love learning. But most people, once they finish school or university, they don't learn anything, barring if they don't get paid more. Do you know what I mean? They're not going to learn it. It could be like an accountant becoming a chartered accountant. You're going to earn more money if you're a chartered accountant. That's why you do it. Now, obviously, there's further learning and stuff like that. But if you're seeking, maybe your job is not very fulfilling and you're trying to seek fulfillment in that job and you're getting stressed because you're not getting it, then the common example would be go and challenge yourself outside of your job. If you've got that availability of free time, which we do, we spend half our time scrolling on social media. You do have time to do things. It's not a prison half the time. You just need to actually do it. You're actually going to feel better. That's the same why the gym can be such a fantastic place.
Yeah, I think there's good stress and then there's bad stress. Like you need, like Georgia said, going to the gym is a good form of stress. You're stressing the body to learn resilience and to become comfortable in an uncomfortable situation. And sometimes stress puts people into bad positions and prompts people to change their life and come out on the other side of that stress very different. Maybe it's a new job, maybe it's a new relationship. They've had to be backed into a corner for them to overcome their hurdles. So stress is not necessarily
if you're
a
very
bad
overweight
thing.
and you're stressed by it, that's probably actually a good thing.
Yeah.
Because you're actually going, do you know what? Not that it should be overcoming you. It's not based on the fact you're fat, you've got fat on you. Just the fact that actually thinking about this and overthinking about it is exactly what you should be doing, because you need to be taking action on being better, feeling better in yourself. And so that stress prompts you to do something. So there is this underlying factor. If you're looking at life, like, children will be stressed. Do you know what I mean? When something goes wrong at school, one of them's ill, your week gets turned upside down, your nanny doesn't turn up, the babysitter's not arrived. This is all stressful things, but can you control it? Sometimes you can't, which means you need to understand what are your best management tactics.
Yeah. And then if you're going to de-stress, you want to make sure that the habits that you are choosing to de-stress are not going to compound and come back and bite you in the bum weeks down the line. So if you're feeling stressed, getting hammered is probably not the most productive thing to do.
Like, why do you feel sad on Tuesday when you've literally consumed liters of alcohol over the weekend?
Yeah, pick something within your wheelhouse of enjoyment. Reading a book. I know it sounds so cliche.
I know, because we're so realistic.
It sounds so cliche
that we're like, go and journal. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying, I get it. Like, you're like, fuck off.
There needs to be some form of self-reflection, self-assessment, and self-care for you to feel better.
Like, for example, a guy in our gym, he is 50 years old, about 50, isn't he? Ben, he's about 50 years old. He's so ADHD. I don't think I've actually met somebody as ADHD is, and he'll openly say it. Super successful, and he's channeled it into yoga because he used to go off the rails with alcohol, drugs, like all of these things, and his wife was getting to the wit's end because she was working and not dealing with that, dealing with a child growing up, and he was busy going and de-stressing, doing things that were not very good habits. Now he then goes and channels it into yoga, which has given him that structure where he goes to the gym still, he trains, do you know what I mean? But that yoga is his mind settler. And that's why so many corporate men that have worked in a corporate stressful world. Now this
all
is just
of them
talking
are yoga
about
instructors.
So women as well get fucking burnt out. They give, you know what I mean? I'm not saying, like, I know women probably sometimes have got it harder than men in the sense of childcare, but they go and resort to something like yoga or finding something where they can actually.
It's like the opposite.
It's the opposite, complete opposite.
Forces you to relax.
And he said, his name, if you ever want to search him on Instagram and have a yoga instructor, is Be Mellow, because it's so great. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like. It just mellows him out to being something that he likes to be around rather than just detest it. So after all, I do think that it's important that when it comes to your stress management, your levels of, how you manage things, that you find that hobby that you enjoy. It's not always reliant on those things that that society tells us we're going to enjoy. Like, soon enough, with the years going by, like, we're going to see the likes of, smoking's already got like people dying on the front of packets of cigarettes. Supposedly they're wanting to do that with alcohol too. This, over the years, is going to help with those de-stressing factors. Now, we have done a podcast, which I would highly suggest if you're dealing with the emotional eating side of stress, which we didn't really touch on today because it is a very complex subject, and we've actually done a very, very in-depth podcast on this before. Emotional eating is something that we also seek when we are stressed. And I definitely dealt with it when I've been very stressed. I used to overeat, and that's probably one of my triggering points as to why I was very overweight. So I would suggest that if you are thinking, oh God, how do I overcome these emotional eatings and understanding of this when it comes to stress, then go back to our podcast list. I can't even remember what episode it was, but it's all about emotional eating, and it's going to really help you discover why you might be doing things or the traits behind an emotional eater. But in the sense of de-stressing on a day-to-day basis, if you are seeking that external stress factor from alcohol, smoking, sex, all of these things, take yourself away, self-reflect, which is something I don't think we do enough of these days. I'm not saying you need to overanalyze every movement you make when it comes to your decision making, but you do need to look back and go, this is not really helping me. And I'm not speaking, and we're not speaking to those that, at the weekend enjoy a nice glass of red wine with a fillet steak and that's very different. You've got things like over control. But if you're that you're going back, or you're getting to the end of the week, and you're purposely trying to de-stress from using things that you know is going to damage your health long term, then we highly suggest you try and find a focal point somewhere else. There are focal points there. Like, we want to be realistic with you. Like, it kind of sometimes upsets me that like people are like, just go and journal and read a book instead of having a cigarette. Do you know what I mean? It's probably not going to tick your mind over. You're probably going to have to do something that actions, maybe even start painting, something bloody random. But anything that's going to take you away from that habit, just think and analyze. So first of all, self-reflect. Second of all, stress is normal. You need to weigh up your stress. And I guess third of all, like, stop taking on other people's stress that you don't need to, because it is going to have that subconscious effect on your day-to-day living with how you, I guess, deal with your own life, because without micromanaging everybody else's, it's very different when you have things like family stress or children's stress, all of those things. That is technically a little bit more personal stress. But if you're taking on somebody you don't really know, you're reading things, you're ingraining all of this information from them, the likelihood is that you need to take a step back. Your de-stressing factor should not be going and trying to resonate with others or find their stress-free tactics. You need to be looking about what you can enjoy on a day-to-day basis that is going to allow you that stress-free life. And also, actually, let me just go back. There is no stress-free life. There is always going to be stresses. It's just how we manage them in the best way possible for us to be the healthiest we can be. So we hope you enjoyed this podcast talking about does stress affect weight loss? We've obviously delved into a bit of cortisol. We've delved into, like the factors behind weight loss. And we've also delved into a lot of things that actually do cause that stress, or things that we reach to when we want to de-stress. So we hope it helped, and we're going to be back next week, and we're probably going to be talking either about sleep or alcohol, because those were the two other ones that we polled up and so many people were interested. So stay tuned for that, and we will speak to you then. Have a great week. Bye.